Hello and welcome to the Menfulness podcast. It's me, Sam Watling. Thank you for joining us as we continue this conversation around men's mental health. We've got a very special episode for you today, a live episode which we filmed on World Suicide Prevention Day in New Ayswick Folk Hall in York last month. And we're joined by Victoria Taylor and Alex Lancaster, trustees of the Charlie Dallas Lancaster Foundation and sisters to Charlie, who was lost tragically to suicide in 2020. We've also got one of our trustees, Jack Woodhams, and one of our volunteers and members, Frankie Sewell, joining us for this conversation. So we've got four unique perspectives on this most difficult of subjects, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. As you might expect, this is going to be tough at times, and we do really get into it, but also, hopefully you'll agree that it's a really hopeful chat filled with insight and lived experience. So if you have any questions, if you've enjoyed this event, please do get in touch and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. If you're going through it right now, then help is out there. You're not alone. 1 in 5 of us are going to feel suicidal at some point in our lives, and there's no shame in that. We would suggest that you call 116 123 if you're in crisis. That will get you through to the Samaritans. They also have a website filled with support. But also, if you're already linked up with us and you want to come and ask us a question, please email hello@menfulness.org and we will do our best to point you in the right direction. Remember, there is hope. There's always one more day. We want to say quickly a thank you to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation too. They have supported this event by funding it, providing the food, and just trusting us that this was going to be a worthwhile conversation to have. So again, a massive thank you to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and all the staff at New Ayswick Folk Hall for the support they've given us and this event. So without further ado, here it is, the conversation in full. Let us know how you feel afterwards with a like or a share. Thank you. Enjoy. Thank you very much. So, as I say, this is new territory for us. We've all spoken before, but not with a big bright light and 50 people in the room. So, are we all feeling okay and ready to go?
Yeah.
Happy?
Yeah, okay. All good.
Brilliant. So, Alex and Victoria, the video, seeing Charlie, like I didn't get to meet Charlie, and so I experienced Charlie's impact through you guys and through the work that you do, and I genuinely feel like he's had a massive impact on my life. And I wonder, when you look back, you talk about how he helped others and he lived to be everybody's cheerleader. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about, you know, how he lived his life and whether you think that some of that was hiding what he was actually going through, like whether there was signs. If you'd like to answer.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie was very open and honest about his mental health always. When he was having his down days, he would always tell us. But yeah, he did deal with it by wanting to help other people, and that was Charlie, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that you hear it now all the time, don't you? But you don't know until you know, I suppose, that my preconception of someone who was suicidal prior to Charlie's passing wasn't Charlie.
Yeah.
I almost had a very naive, I don't know, someone that was troubled or didn't have support or didn't have a family or was out of work or maybe had an addiction. I don't know, I was really naive. Charlie was none of those things.
Yeah.
He had a stable family, very loving family, an amazing friendship group, a loving partner, was financially secure. You know, you hear it all the time, he had everything. He had everything.
Yeah.
And that's very hard. And spoke about his mental health, was open about his mental health, came to us when he needed help, came to us and said, I'm not feeling great.
Yeah.
So then...
Is that something that, like, was that instilled in you as a family? Is that what you all did?
Yeah.
Is that how you were brought up?
Oh yeah, definitely. We're
really open family.
Yeah, but yeah, like Victoria said, it is so naive to think that it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People get really good at hiding it.
Yeah.
It becomes part of what
And
they
he
do.
didn't necessarily hide it, that's the thing. He was very open about it, but like, you know, we didn't have much knowledge about it. We didn't, not as much knowledge as we have now. And yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we didn't probably ask the question, because never in a million years did we ever think it would happen, and that's naive.
Yeah.
I actually did ask the question, but I asked it in completely the wrong way, knowing what I know now.
Are you happy to tell us what that
Yeah.
was?
So Charlie had bouts of very extreme highs, but incredible lows, and was very open about his lows. And it was a period where, from probably about May 2020, maybe a bit before that, but for a sustained amount of time, was very unwell. And he came to stay at my house on and off. And it was a period when he was staying at mine, and I mean, just awful to say, but was asking more because he was staying with us, and I was, because we've been brought up, our dad had mental health issues, so we were brought up in a family that there was a lot of things that we saw that we perhaps shouldn't have done, and I was doing it to safeguard my children more than anything. And I feel sick saying that, but that is the honest truth, and I want to be honest. And I'd said, "You're not thinking of doing anything stupid, are you?" Yeah. And I just feel, you know, absolutely dreadful that I said that. And of course he was like, "God, Vic, don't be ridiculous." Like, but we didn't think it, because he was open about his mental health.
Yeah.
He was telling us how he felt. So if he was telling us how he felt, he would tell us that.
Yeah. And I think we learn these phrases that feel natural to say in those scenarios, and I don't, it time. Even still, sometimes I'll find myself saying commit, and then I'll go no, because I need to remember that that's a word that's outdated, even with all the experiences that I've had. And so I think it's figuring out whether there is something that you can ask that will work. And I wonder if it's the right time to bring you in, Frankie. Can you tell us a bit about what your experience was like before you faced what you did, and whether you think that you gave off signs or wanted to give off signs?
It's surreal listening to what you're saying, because I was on the other side of that conversation, and I don't think there's much you could have said differently, because when you're in a state where everything's blinkered, it's like you put a crash helmet on and there's a visor, and no matter how good something is, it's still grey. Everything is just that off colour. You don't see the brightness, you don't see the love, the lucky, you know, all the stuff that people talk about. I've been pondering this for quite a while, and I think we should be looking at the preventative side, which you guys are already doing, Menfulness is already doing, and everyone here is looking at what we can do, and it's that step further back. And it doesn't really matter what question you ask, doesn't really matter what way you go about it. It's go and see your mates, give them a hug, ask how they're doing, what's going on. For me, it was people going, "Oh, sure, you've got all this lovely stuff. I was at a high-paid job. I was earning a load of money. I had all this other stuff going on." It was just stuff, but in here it was hurting, and it was hurting so bad. So it's really hard to quantify that. Yeah. And you know, a lot of people take it on themselves and say, "What could I have done differently?" I don't think you can, and it's about making it acceptable to sit up here and go to you guys. I don't know everyone here, but I was hurting. I was hurting really badly, but I didn't feel comfortable enough to say to enough people, "I need help."
And do you think that anyone could see but didn't know how to ask when you look back now? Do you think that you were giving off those signs subconsciously, or?
I think people could see, definitely. I've spoken to my friends. I was out with them at the weekend, and I was telling them I was doing this, and I was going to be speaking quite openly about what happened, and I said, "I know you guys knew that I was hurting and I was in a bad way, just by the conversations on WhatsApp." I mean, this was during lockdown, so we couldn't actually meet people, but they could see me hurting, and a few of them were going, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Is there anything else we can do?" And I was like, "No, I'm all right, I'm okay. And then when that phone call was finished, or the video call finished, or whatever, I was back to, you know, crash helmet back on, and that's where I was. So yes, I was giving off signs, but I don't think people were in a position to say, "Can I help?" in a way that I wanted to be helped, and equally I didn't feel comfortable enough to say how much pain I was in.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different aspects of that.
Yeah, thank you. And Jack, with you having some experience in workshops around this, I wonder if you, if there are specific signs that we should look for in people, or that people tend to give off, and that we should be using to spark that conversation with people. If you can give us any tips on that.
Yeah, it's quite surreal being up here and amongst my friends and talking about this, and certainly knowing Charlie, and the Charlie that you were talking about, the Charlie that most people see. I saw Charlie out and about as that showman, and he a bit like your previous story. What's fascinating with the work that I'm doing at York College and over at Asker and Bryan is most people, and most young people, are well aware of the suicide within their family and their friends, and they're aware of the issues that are facing it. It's just about having that conversation. Yeah. Many of the young people, 16, 17-year-olds, have done mental health first aid. They're clearly clued up with what's going on, but they're just like, actually, how do you ask that question? Yeah. And the phrases to use, and then also, I suppose, the fear of asking those questions. What if they say yes? Yeah. What if they say no? What the fears that I suppose for young people that we all have, and what do I do with that information? Where can I go? And I suppose the best thing to do is to say that nobody needs to be, and I'm not a suicide prevention specialist to be able to do this. And what we're learning across the board is that the difference, and those people that have saved lives in the time of need is that human connection. Yeah. It's that's been the impact, and that's been the hook that's saved them in. So there are things, what if they say yes, and then to kind of give the evidence of, actually, none of us are that powerful, and there's absolutely no data out there by mentioning the word suicide. In fact, it's one of those things, a bit like anxiety and depression. Once you let it out, it's not a eureka moment, but it's like you knew that something's going on, and they mention that, and they want to talk about it, and then just by being empathetic and listening and kind of go, I'm so glad you told me, I'm so proud of you for doing that, that must be really difficult, I'm here for you, tell me more, and knowing that they're in a safe space. And like with all the social media that's gone out here, the 1 in 5, people have suicidal ideation, and it's trying to differentiate between suicidal ideation and people that have actually got a plan. Yeah. And that's a difference. Like the One More Day film that we all saw, is to give another option. So many people who are out there, there's usually 2 options, and both of those for people with suicidal ideation is too much. It's too much to take their own life, but it's too much to continue your own life. Yeah. So what we're saying, one more day, yeah, and we'll get through this. And hopefully in that point, they'll realise. A lot of the young people are really worried about what if they upset them. Yeah. And it's really difficult to stay upset with somebody who is just showing you love and compassion, and that might be a response, and being okay with that's going to be a response. Yeah. But inevitably they will come around that over time and go, actually, they were asking me that because they care, and being as direct as possible when asked about suicide. I think people are under the misconception that if you say, are you thinking about suicide, that if they weren't, by you saying it, you're going to somehow kind of plant that seed, or that actually maybe they need cheering up, and actually redirecting the conversation down the line of, well, how do I make this person feel better in this moment? But actually that misses the point, and then the opportunity where that person was vulnerable, whether it was they said, I've had enough, and they might have meant, I've had enough of my job, or I've had enough of my relationship,
but unless you ask them, are you thinking about suicide, then I suppose you don't get that opportunity to know. Frankie, I wonder whether you feel when you went through what you did, and if you're happy to tell us a bit more about sort of what happened, how you got to the position that you were in, just a bit of background, whatever you're comfortable with, and also whether you think that someone could have said something, or whether anybody tried to say something.
Yeah, thank you. So I was in a very fortunate position. I had a family, a really successful job, getting paid loads of money. I thought that was successful. I thought that was happiness. I thought that was a measure of doing well. That started to fall apart. My marriage broke down. I started getting divorced. I moved out of the family home. Lost my job through redundancy after COVID. I was not in a very good place. I was filling that gap with multiple things. I was not being the best version of myself. And that went down from having fun, filling my time, to in a very, very, very dark place. And that was a very gradual thing that, I talked on the podcast before, it's almost like a well. You're sort of like gradually going down and down. You don't see it happening, and all of a sudden you're like, there's no light. What's going on? How do I get out of here? And I was just sort of pondering when you were saying about, people saying that they're unhappy, they've had enough. I do recall sometimes saying, I've had enough of this, I can't do this anymore. And people were like, oh, but look, you've got 2 kids and they're my world, and yeah, absolutely. You've got this and you've got that, and all these people love you. And I'm like, but I'm sitting here at night on my own crying, and it's heartbreaking. And I do remember saying a few times, and I wonder if someone had said something like that, would that have made a difference? So yes, you've got these incredible highs and lows, and Charlie's story is very similar when you say things about what I was feeling at that time as well. So it resonates with me. When I was high, I was fun time Frankie. I was the guy that everyone wanted to be around. I was a holiday rep in Ibiza, so I had that persona and all this. Everyone wanted to be around me. It was the life and soul of the party, the last one up, drinking the most, doing the most, whatever. But when it was low, it was really low. Rock bottom low.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, man.
Yeah.
How can we make sure that now you would tell us, do you think that you would be more likely to seek out one of those conversations? Do you think that you, the environment that you're in now is different?
So I'm looking at around 2021, so I'm 3rd bonus year I'm now in. I could phone multiple people now at any time of the day, and they'd pick up.
Yeah.
Because they feel comfortable having a conversation with me about my feelings.
Yeah.
Where before I could have phoned someone. I mean, certainly if I even skip back to when I was 15, and I remember speaking to someone and going, I feel like something not right. I feel wrong. I don't feel very well in my head. And they basically said, don't be gay.
Right.
That's like, we don't talk about that. That means that's something we don't do. And so that's sort of, let's say that festered in my head to say that, we don't talk about that. You have to deal with it yourself. And that sort of went through. So how do we do that now? Is we have these conversations. We listen to people. If you have a friend you're worried about, go and see that person. Go and give them a hug. Do something that's that physical intimacy. Just, I've got you, brother. I've got your sister. Whatever it is, doesn't matter who it is, what it is. Go and give them a hug.
Yeah.
Ask the question and ask it again. Remember you saying on your podcast, ask them twice. Yeah. Do it.
Well, there's 2 things that you said there. One person responded by essentially insulting how you were feeling and making you feel like...
That was a very, very long time ago, so that has changed.
But then the other person, probably with good intentions, was trying to remind you of all the good things, as though that you'd forgotten those. And I just wonder, because I think that is something that most people would reach to if they hadn't had these sorts of conversations before, would reach to what can I remind this person of? And I wonder if you can tell us about how it felt. Does that add an extra layer of guilt? Do you think, well, You know, does it make you angry? Like, how would you respond to someone who said that to you now?
That's a really good question. You've almost got to set aside and put a division in between that mental struggle and life. And I'm talking about your life as your family life, you know, career, whatever it is. They are two separate things. They become more and more segregated the worse you get. It becomes insular. You're down a well on your own. Yeah. Everyone else is stuck elsewhere and you can't reach them. It's almost like I'd convinced myself that I was better off. My family and friends and even my kids were better off without me. That's the disconnect it becomes. So reminding you of how great this is, how much money you make, and you've all these people. I'm like, but I'm alone in here, and it's just something. It's so you're so insulated in your own head.
I wonder how this is making you feel, because it sounds like Charlie was giving off every sign that he wasn't alone, and he was reaching out for some of that support. And I wonder if, you know, if he ever, I just wonder if you've got any insight onto, you know, how Charlie was feeling during those times, whether when he did talk about his mental health, what did he have to say about it? How did he present that to you?
He used to say actually quite a bit latterly. He didn't feel. He was desperate to feel anything, something, anything. He said, I just feel numb. I'll feel anything, badness, sadness, like couldn't cry, just didn't feel, just had no emotion at all.
Yep.
And actually, I struggle with this because he was in therapy. We promote therapy. Yeah. He spoke openly. We promote speaking openly. He didn't drink alcohol when he was low at all. Knew all the right things to do. Went for a run, went for a walk, drank the shakes, whatever. Yeah. He did all that. So I sometimes sit and when we're talking about the foundation, I think, God, we're all promoting all these things, and actually he did all those things. Yeah, that's difficult. Because all the things we're saying that you need to do, okay, I asked the question the wrong way, but I asked it. Everything we're saying here
was in place.
Yeah. And outwardly, Charlie, not knowing him well, but through social media, certainly during COVID, I remember him putting on a post that go, this is tough, but you know, if anybody needs me, please come and get. And he was the go-to guy. And the money that he raised for it was York Mind at the time. It was remarkable as part of the round table, and he was such a beacon of like talking about, you know, mental health, and I can see why that's difficult.
I can understand why he was thinking like that. You never want someone to feel the way you do, and he's trying to help more people not feel like that. So if you can imagine, and Sam, I've talked to you about this before, to help sort of try and understand where the disconnect, I think what you're saying. If you're in a room like this and you're anchored to the ground with a chain and the water's rising and you've got all these tools to help you swim, if you don't address this, none of the tools help. You need to address the anchor, the thing that's holding you back, the chain that's going to drag you down. And until you do all that stuff, and like counselling, yes, I've done that. I've done trauma counselling, I've done all this, and I'm lucky that I'm really, really lucky that I'm here, and I'm glad that I'm here to be able to say this. But that's possibly the thing. In that, I'm just using my experience. I don't know if that's true or not, but if there's something that's not addressed, all the other stuff just sort of adds on to. I
sometimes feel, just commenting on what you say about, there's a sense that I'll overcompensate for what I feel is in a sense that I'm not good enough. So And a lot of people who know me well and have known me for years, when I try and explain this to them, he's like, what are you on about? You're everyone's best mate, you're always the smiley one, you're always the first one at the bar, you're always the first one on the dance floor. What are you must be talking nonsense. And it's like a lot of it is redirection, as in like, I would rather talk about you than talk about me. I would rather have a laugh with you than, once upon a time, than really talk about what's going on with either of us, because then I'd have to face the fact that I don't always feel good enough for the world. And actually, the more I do that makes me feel good enough for the world, the more sort of pats on the head and high fives and validation that I get, the less that feeling feels like it owns me. And I think for a lot of men, that's quite a hard thing to accept, that like, you're not just doing things because they're the right thing to do. Sometimes you're doing things because you've got to do something to make you feel good enough. And that is, I think that isn't talked about as much as it should be. And I don't know if that was Charlie's experience, but he reminds me of me. Like, I watch the videos of him and I hear people talk about him, and it's the same way that I'd love to be spoken about like that. I'd love to have met him. I'd love to spend time with him. Every time I talk to you about him, he was the first one to ask you how you were. You talk about, he was the cheerleader who said what what were you doing with your business. And so, I wouldn't, you can't put words into someone's mouth that you've never met. But I know from my point of view, sometimes I do those things to compensate for the void, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what it was like when when you lost Charlie, how the family, how you coped, was there support, how did you support each other? Could you give us a little bit of insight to that?
Oh God, it was brutal. It was and is heartbreaking every single day. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing to live with. And our family will never be the same again. And we didn't get any support, did we? We had nothing. We didn't know where to go. There was nothing offered. And for us, we don't want people to ever have to feel like that, because it is a dark place. It's horrible.
We were so lucky that we had each other, because we were kind of each other's sort of barometer with like...
We both felt exactly the same.
And the thoughts we individually had, but then can I just check myself with you because I'm thinking this, and then you'd be like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's fine. I'd be like, there was no... It was kind of like, here's the leaflet, these are the people you can speak to. That was literally it. And it was summer school holidays, so we had children at home, and you were trying to firefight that, and it was just just absolutely horrendous.
It goes to show the importance of having someone that you can say anything to, or that gets it, that gets how you feel.
And it was non-judgy, was it? Like, we're sisters, so you can say anything.
Yeah. What about the rest of the family? I mean, I know that the CDLF also contains a lot of Charlie's friends and Gemma, Charlie's partner, and I just, did you bring it together? Did you talk? How long did it take you to start up the foundation?
It took a while, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was May 2021 that we launched the foundation, and I think that in itself was really special, because it did bring us all together. It reunited us with Charlie's best friends, and Gemma we've always had a really good relationship with, but it just created such a bond, and I think we all dealt with our grief in our own ways through the foundation.
Yeah, so it was your own sort of...
Yeah, it was our own sanity, I guess. It was just, we could talk so much about him, which we do every day anyway. But it was so nice to hear different stories from his friends, and hard, but it was nice to sit back and be like, God, yeah, do you know what? He was really special.
I love what you say, that you say his name every day.
Yeah.
And so does everyone.
And I think that's, when you lose someone and when you're grieving, I always think after the funeral, sort of people do go back on and do their own lives, and of course life goes on, but actually for the people that then have to try and live a new life, it's nice to have, CDLF, we have a meeting once a month. Okay, yes, we're talking about the charity, but we're still talking about Charlie. So then in turn, that's like helping you to grieve, because you're actively talking about him all the time. in terms of the support, yeah, I mean, it was just horrendous.
But we're only talking a few years ago.
Yeah,
so
2020.
Is now you know what support is out there. Do you think you could have done? Is there something that you think we could have done with that at the time? You know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because we know different bereavement services as well. I mean, I wouldn't have even had a clue where to go.
And I think, but I feel it's difficult to speak about other people's situations in it, and she won't mind us saying, Mum was in a completely different situation as well. Our grief was different, so she was looking for someone that had been through what she'd been through in the same circumstances, and she was just always wanting to find another mother who'd lost a son through suicide, and she was just searching for answers all the time. And that in turn was difficult as well, because we didn't have the answers and our grief was different, and then you're all trying to support each other, and you know, that was really difficult as well, because it's very, I suppose as well for my mum's generation, you know, she's in her 70s, there was a lot of, was it fair to say, shame maybe as well? Had she done, you know, and I'm not speaking on behalf of her. I think it's difficult when you give someone else's perspective, but that's very difficult as well.
Yeah.
There's lots of angles to it, isn't there, when you're bereaved by suicide? It's that kind of ripple effect that travels through so many different generations and so many different people.
And people don't know what to say. So when you look for support, or you open a supportive conversation and people clam up or avoid that conversation because, or maybe even avoid the person because they think, oh, I'm going to have that conversation when I see that person. So I can imagine sometimes it can feel probably quite lonely. I mean, it's like you say, you two had each other, but I can imagine for some people that grief is so unique to that person. If you don't have a really supportive network around you and you don't know where to look, that could be a really lonely time. Jack, I was going to ask you a bit more just about these conversations and how to know what to say, and whether or not when you have these workshops, whether or not the younger generation are different. Do they have different ways of coping with this stuff? What does your co-production work look like around this sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's really targeted support. So there's areas, I think there's suicide in which can affect anyone at any one time, and we look at those at four main areas, which is, if you're at risk, it's loneliness and isolation, it's finances and family as well. And if you're one of those, you're at risk. But if you hit all of them, and illness as well. So if you're ill and suddenly you've lost your job, it's affecting your family, it's affecting your finances, then you're very much at risk. And that type of, I suppose, that can affect everyone. But then there's also groups in terms of high-risk groups that we're trying to work with. And I think we're kind of well aware of the construction industry, where there's also that we're working with travellers as well, your carers, young mums, new mothers and mums, and also the agricultural industry as well, so, and the veterinary world. So I'm doing co-production, targeted support over at Askham Bryan and York College, and people coming into that world. And it's the conversations, because I'm not in that world, we can help with them, but about the tools, about spotting the signs, and these young people, certainly it's usually friends that notice the signs, notice the subtleties. I think with family members, sometimes they try and hide it and say, Mum, I'm fine, I'm all right, and they can't really see anything. But as a friend, like in terms of the importance of trusting your gut, did your friend, does he always turn up to football? Is he drinking a lot more? Is he getting a little bit emotional, or is he completely withdrawn? Yeah. So does he usually send you abusive text messages? This is what one lad said. He said, my friend is always sending me emojis, like abusive emojis, and I asked him if he's all right, and he didn't respond. Yeah. And so really kind of trusting your gut and acting on that. And and I said, what did you do? You know, where did you go? He said, I messaged him again, and then I knocked on his door, and then I knocked again, and then I phoned his mum, and he was like, what are you doing that for, phoning my mum? He said, I don't know, I was just really worried about you. And another high risk, he was affected by suicide, and 1 in 10 suicides is people that are bereaved by suicide. So he knew that his friend was going through all of this, and got the signs and did something the right thing about it. But there's that fear of the unknown and knowing what to do with that. But there is support. And out there, and undoubtedly it's that human connection. This is a beautiful story about this guy called Johnny Benjamin, who's an amazing, who's written a story called The Stranger on the Bridge, and he was struggling with his own sexuality. He had attempted to take his own life numerous times, and he was sectioned in a mental health hospital, and that was it. That was the time that he was going to take his own life, and he had a plan. And he sat at the bridge, and this stranger walked past and sat down next to him and didn't say a word. And at first he was frustrated. He was just like, what's this guy, what's he doing? And he said, I never talked ever like that. And he just listened. He said, I'm not going anywhere, I'll just listen. And then he said, so what are we going to do now then? What's your plan? He said, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell my parents about my sexuality. I'm going to be open. And then they found this huge campaign called Find Mike, who was this guy. And we wanted to learn. We said, well, what was the difference? And he said, undoubtedly, it was that human connection. It was that he didn't need to do it, but it was the right thing to do. And Samaritans have recently, they've done a small talk, Save Lives, which is in partnership with a national rail about if your instincts, if you notice someone that's struggling, to go up and speak to them, certainly at railway stations and stuff, or do something about it by going and telling someone. So kind of like to really trust your gut and do that intervention. And quite often that can be the turning point for that person. It can be the deciding factor to kind of go, oh gosh, I was in that frame of mind. I really need to go and get help. But not all. They do say that they're preventable, but not all suicides are. You can put in as much support and guidance and love and for individuals who are emotionally in tune, who's got everything on paper, And it's a sad fact that some people do and continue to do so. But if we can have the only way of preventing suicide is doing what we're doing, is by talking about it and making it a thing. It's an absolute disgrace that the increase in numbers in the last year has increased by 5%, and it's only going one way. And if we can continue and actually have some investment in that to make a difference, like they do with stopping smoking, for example, there's a huge amount of money that's spent in that. And there are areas of the country, I think it's Detroit, they reduced suicides by 75% because they invested money in training and supporting people to deal with it and having that honest conversation. So
it's possible.
It's possible.
I love that story as well, because it shows that actually you don't always need to know what to say in that scenario. You can just sit and listen to someone and say as little as possible. And I know in our first podcast, when we were talking about just how to open up a mental health conversation, but you said sometimes when you don't know what to say, you say, I don't know what to say here, and then you've started the ball rolling, the conversation's going, so that's lovely. I was going to ask Frankie a little bit about, you mentioned counselling, you mentioned trauma counselling, you mentioned having some of that support, and I wonder if you'd be happy to share what that looked like, what an impact it had on you, whether it's something that you would recommend to other people.
The answer is yes. I would recommend it for everybody, regardless of your mental state, your position, anything. Just normalise going to someone and saying, I need help with this.
Yeah.
I think kids do it.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking earlier on about your child going to the toilet, and it's like, they just need a little bit of help. But I think as we get older, we say we're stronger, we don't need this. Men, I don't mean to do a gender stereotype in that we're bigger and stronger and we don't need help.
Yeah.
We probably need more help than we realise. Luckily, you know, we have partners that go recognise that and realise we're not exactly as clued in as we think. But I think we all need more help than we realise is the answer. And counselling, it certainly changed my perspective from where I was at rock bottom. And, you know, rock bottom is the worst place you can ever be. If you can imagine a scale of 0 to 10, where most people sort of operate, you know, some people have a bad day, that's like a 2. You know, when you go down past 0 and you start getting the blinkers on and things like that, it's a really scary place. But actually being able to navigate out of that with help changed my perspective on life, and going from where I thought it was like I thought it was thriving in life, it was just about surviving. And, you know, I talk about bonus years and that comes from intense work. I mean, absolutely rinsing emotionally. You know, an hour's session of counselling. It took me maybe 3 hours after that to process what went on, and literally had to sit and just go, you know, nobody talked to me for a while. You know, I just need to just try and work out what happened. It was the best thing I could ever done.
And do you think that was it difficult to get into it? Because it sounded like last time we spoke about your upbringing in Belfast, that talking about mental health and showing that vulnerability as a young person was not the done thing. Is that fair to say? And also, does that present a barrier when you try and start counselling about something this complicated?
We're progressively getting better, I believe. That's, well, my perception is that we're getting better at that. Going back to like sort of mid-90s, there was no mental health support whatsoever. It was like, you know, I tried when I was 15 through bullying and was unsuccessful then, and was discharged from the hospital, and they were like, you're okay, you can go home, all is good. And you're like, but my brain's not fixed, there's something wrong here. And it was like, no, but you're okay, on you go. And I'm like, okay, right, so how do I fix this? And it was like, just compartmentalise that, create a persona. You've got the fun guy that nobody wants to look over here, this little scared boy. Look at me, the big fun guy, but don't look at him. And that got progressive. I suppose the macho side of it, you know, I think my father always said the people that are like, you know, the most loud and shouting, they're not really hard men or tough men. The tough men know what's right. And if you're able to go, I'm not all right, I'm not okay, I need help. You have to know you need help. Yeah. And I think what we're doing here is we're trying to highlight that it's okay to need help. It's okay to ask. If anybody here said they needed a hug, I'd give you a hug. Yeah. You know.
And I would recommend that you should definitely all do that, because they're some of the best hugs on the market.
Free.
I would thank you for that. And I wonder, maybe it's a bit of a question for everyone though, because you're all parents, whether you think that these experiences and the work that we do has changed the way that you talk about mental health to your kids. I know they're all different ages, and you know, how would you say you approach it? I know you said for a while it felt like you were having to safeguard them from people's reaction to this, but what about now? Like, how do you feel that you bring mental health into the conversation with them?
So I've got 2 children, and actually when Charlie passed away, I didn't speak the truth of his passing. And then my eldest went to secondary school 2 years ago, and was asked to do a project at school about a charity that he really invested in, and went on our website and watched our videos, and then came home and said, Mummy, I've seen something. And I didn't mind the way he found out. I didn't mind that I didn't tell him. I've seen something and I want to speak to you about it. And I think we don't give children enough credit, actually, because you've said for such a long time, you have to tell your eldest, you have to tell him, you know, he's going to find out, and he did. But I think in giving him that, having that years of maturity, I can now have a conversation with them about it. I mean, they learn about it in their curriculum at secondary school, so I don't know how to answer it in an articulate way, really, because it's difficult, it's different for different people. But mental health is spoken about, but I still do think there's a shame in it, you know. I feel like he's quite embarrassed. I think he's embarrassed. It wouldn't be something he'd discuss with his peers. But I still have that conversation, and I'll still bring it into the conversation. But then there's an edge to that, isn't there? Because then he thinks I'm having that conversation because of my lived experience, and I am. But whereas my youngest doesn't know.
And what about, you know, I guess the way that you introduce mental health generally into your conversations with them? Because, like, for me, that wasn't something I talked about until I was, like, in my 30s, probably. Certainly in my late 20s. I was even on my mental health was even not really even on my radar. And that's because actually it's not something that my parents talk about. And I'll try, but I know that they certainly have a sort of barrier. And I know they wouldn't mind me saying that there is a part of them that it is so sort of either personal or internal that there is a limit to how much I can communicate with them about that. And I just wonder, do you talk to your kids about their mental health, and has your experiences that you've had, does that impact the way that you communicate with them about it? Or their mental health for that matter, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my son's school has asked us Menfulness to deliver workshops there. There's certainly lots of toxic masculinity in that, and this is a primary school, year 5 and year 6 boys. And the head teacher actually came up to me and said, never in my lifetime did I dream that, you know, that I would have to make phone calls to parents about kids having suicidal ideation. And these are kids 9, 10, 11-year-olds. With Henry, it's strange because actually we both have the same fears. We worry about my daughter who's got health needs, and we see her struggle on a daily basis, and he sees that no matter how much I protect him. So actually it's quite a comfort for us both to kind of go, when he's talking about it, he goes, Daddy, do you worry about her? I said, yeah, I worry every day, son, and you know, but that's part of being a parent, and it's part of being a brother. But you know, she's very much loved, and we talk about well-being, and he says, because he saw one of his friends came in with a football shirt on, and it had Menfulness on it, and the pride in him. He said, that's my daddy's charity, and asking about that, and he said, and what he wants to do is help people, and for me, like we talk about, you know, success and what is success. I said, just remember when you're 80 years old and you're in your old people's home, and you look back in your life, what in order of priorities, what would you think about first? He said, yeah, I think about family. And said, yeah, so that's your number one priority, isn't it? And I said, for me, I think about my family, my loved ones, and I think about Menfulness. So that's why it's important to me. So do something that's important to you, that makes you happy. So I don't think we've mentioned in terms of, but it wouldn't, if he asks a question in terms of talking about suicide, I do believe that we need to talk about it to prevent it. And they often, you know, they say that, you know, nobody just suddenly turns 18 and you have mental health issues. Certainly, I think the percentage of people, certainly with SMI, serious mental ill health, you're diagnosed earlier on. There's a lot later on, there isn't as many people that are diagnosed. So in order to do, say, in terms of prevention, that we need to be talking about mental health. And the pressure that the schools are under, you know, like when he's talking about arithmetics and stuff, he said, well, why do I need to do this? And it's generally to pass the test. And what we're needing to teach, certainly young boys, is to be as emotionally mature and to be vulnerable as possible, and actually say it's a bit of a superpower. I remember talking to the guys at the talk group, and like we were sat there. I said, "Oh, watch Australia, Married at First Sight," and that one of the judges was like, "Vulnerability is a superpower," and actually you're getting it wrong, guys. Actually, us women find it really sexy. And so all the guys were like, "Oh, really?" You know, like, and actually to flip it on its head, that actually it's such a, you only feel benefit and being amongst other people, and I think who don't sometimes know what to say, but it's always more impactful to me because they don't know what to say and they try and say something. So like I've been to GPs, I've had counselling and professional, but it's a very kind of transactional kind of, yes, it helps in that time, but somebody who's a stranger who you sat next to and goes, "Fucking hell, Jack, that sounds really shit." I'm like, it gives me a lift that, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm gutted to hear that you've been going through that. And that's the knowing that you're not alone with this, and knowing that there's amongst the city, there's like 50 guys all sat around talking, and amongst them there will be definitely somebody that's been going through something that you're going through. And to put them in touch with each other, to support each other, it's a dream, isn't it? And see the difference that it makes.
I wonder if you ever
incredible.
Thought that it would become, part of the suicide prevention world. And we've got some research coming, and I don't think we'll go into it now because we're running out of time. But we're having an impact on this conversation, and that's spurred us on to have these conversations like this more publicly. But I wonder if when you started Menfulness 5 years ago, whatever it was, whether you were thinking about the conversations around mental health and getting blokes that were dealing with challenges, or whether you were thinking this is going to be a preventative measure to save lives from suicide.
I remember us as a committee actually trying to steer away from that because it was too heavy. It was just like, whoa, we can't become that charity. We've got to be very much like mental health and well-being, but it became part of the subject, because it was so common. I mean, we only started as a dad's group, and basically we wanted to meet up and eat bacon and moan on about being parents and being exhausted, and it worked. But more and more people saw the space that was created. It was an environment where people felt comfortable to talk because they weren't going to there because it wasn't a clinical setting. They'll go in there as a parent and it's just like, oh well, this is cool, and you saw these conversations happen. More and more guys wanted to join who weren't dads, which kind of surprised us. They wanted to come to a walk and talk and all those type of things. And a football, and we were like, all right, okay, well, yeah. So we felt like we needed something to work in partnership. So we needed something specifically for mental health and menfulness. I think the badge gives people permission to talk. It creates an environment. It knows that it's non-judgmental. There's clear values of what we're about. We're about kindness, love, compassion, and supporting one another, realising that we're not there to fix it, but knowing that you don't have to face it alone is hugely important. Yeah. Nobody's ever fixed my situation, and nobody is ever going to, but knowing that I've got these literally thousands of guys behind me cheerleading me on, going, I've got your back. It's the best. You feel indestructible because you've got that. And sometimes you don't use it. You might not use it for 6 to 8 months. People go away, but that's a safety net in itself. Knowing it's there, knowing if I need counselling because we go up and we go down, I can go back to those guys and they will help me at whatever stage that you're at.
Yeah.
It's a dream.
Yeah, and you mentioned the badge giving permission, and not everybody knows, but the cube has its own backstory about sort of one side of the cube being sort of not visible to people, and that actually a lot of us are like that. Not just men, but just people generally will hide a side of them, and that means that we're all dealing with something. and it might not be solvable. It might just take a conversation to sort of bring that side out of someone. I wonder if you guys would be happy to tell us a bit about your logo and your charity, a bit more about the work you do, and we've got an event coming up very soon which I'm excited about, so I'd just like people to get a real feel for the things that you do and what's coming up.
Go on.
So we have a big event coming up in November the 23rd this year, which is a ball that we do at York Racecourse, where we have a live auction, a live band, it's black tie do, and it's a 3-course meal, and it's a massive fundraising night for us. So yeah, we sell tickets. We've sold
We're about 150.
No way, that's
and
amazing.
we aim for about 180, so we've still got a bit of time. But it's massive fundraising night for us.
Prizes are outrageously good.
Yeah.
I don't know how you manage that. I'm guessing you just have a team of people going out there and finding these.
No.
It's just you two.
Well, yeah, we all do our bit. We all do our bit. So every year we say, I'm not doing it. That's it. I'm not doing it again. This is last year. It's too stressful. But our aim, obviously, is that anyone who comes to us for support, funding, or to have our support boards in their workplaces. So there's sort of 3 arms to what we do. We offer
I'll get you support.
people can contact CDLF basically, and we can put them in contact with a therapist or a counsellor, very similar to the Menfulness, the way Menfulness work. Al is in the audience now. He's one of our therapists who does box therapy. People can contact us if they want a board in their workplace, so maybe just a signpost to people to support. They're open a lot of colleges, dentists, a lot of businesses. So we fund and send out free of charge to people. So every year we say we're not going to do the ball, but we've never
Every year we do the ball.
Yeah, every year we do the ball, because we've not had anyone that's ever come to us for support who's needed financial support, or a charity. So another charity might come to us and say, we really need some finances for X, Y, Z. We've just done one with local schools in York recently where we funded some booklets that can go home with children, and it's just like a Q&A that they can sit down with their parents and talk about their mental health and like start a conversation with their parents.
Wow. That's lovely.
So we've just funded them, and we don't want to say no to anything, so we have to keep on doing the ball that causes so much headache because we need the money to keep on doing what we're doing. So
It's so worth it when you get there and it's all so fancy and it's so much fun, isn't it?
yeah.
But yeah, we're going to be hosting again this year.
Yes, you
Yeah.
guys do
Very
us
exciting.
justice.
So tickets people can get from the website, can they?
Yeah, so the best way to follow all what we do is just on our socials. We put everything on there.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Thank you, and thank you for all you do for us. I know I said it in the video, but you know, we wouldn't be the charity we are today without your sort of guidance and constant support and WhatsApp messages and long voice notes. Yeah. Frankie, I wonder if I could come to you before we go to the Q&A, because you talk about your bonus years, and I think it's a really lovely concept. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about if you would have advice for somebody who's in the situation that you were in, and what it means, you know, how you live your life now. Like what do bonus years mean for you?
So I'd say the first couple of years I thought I was I was fixed, or I was better, or I was healthier, I suppose. And it's only taken until earlier this year that I realised that I'm actually now in a really good place. It's taken a lot of hard work. I just recently fully qualified as an electrician. I completely retrained. That was, you know, anything's possible if you've got the right attitude and the right support and the right circumstances. And I'm not saying that everything is fixable. I mean, you've just mentioned that nobody can fix everything and not everything's fixable. But if you've got the right set of circumstances and the right amount of people around you, things are possible. If you ask for help, it is there. I can guarantee you now, anybody that feels on their own, I bet you can call one person. I bet you there's someone that would help you if you asked. And even now, it's getting easier and easier for people to to facilitate that, because, like, hands up, if someone calls you and asks for help, who would help? Everybody. That's where we are now. That's how easy it is to just take that little step. Just, can you help me? Yeah, I can. That's not easy for everybody to do. That's all right, me sitting here, Mr. Confident, that's been through it all and whatever, but it's there. The worst I ever felt at that time, I would never, ever, ever want someone to feel like that because of me. And that's what I strive every day. I haven't sort of spoke to my kids about this so much, but I did use the One More Day video to my son, and the two of us cried. And I said, please, like, just listen to what that's saying. Don't ever feel that you have to do that for me. I want you to be able to talk to me about that. My son's 14 now, my daughter's 12. And I talk to them every day. How are you feeling? What's going on today? Did you have a good day? What wasn't working for you? Why is that? Ask the questions that mean something, not just, you know, the blasé ones. Take time. See your mates. Go and see your friends. Take time to go and see your friends. Phone calls are great and video calls, etc. I know everybody gets busy. Lockdown was a nightmare for a lot of people. Either really, really went well, or it was really bad for people. The phone calls are good, but the actual in-person, and we've highlighted this again, the in-person feeling of having someone just give you a hug can inspire that conversation and say, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Tell me about that, or I don't know what to say. Yeah. Just do something. Yeah. Make time for people.
We started check-in Tuesdays in Menfulness today, and we've had that conversation as part of this, really, that kind of it's easy to sort of turn "Are you all right?" into a bit of a sort of throwaway greeting, and to how to figure out how you might ask somebody and them know for a fact you actually want to hear the answer. And so there's ask twice. We're asking people out of 5 and saying, like, how are you out of 5? And actually, not only does it mean that they have to sort of think about that and give you an answer, but where they pitch that answer could open a conversation too. And I'd love to talk to you a little more. It has been a long conversation, and I wonder if now might be the time to draw it to a close. Is there anything else that you guys might want to share on top of that? I'd like to just, first of all, before I thank our guests, to just say a big thank you to Johnny, who has helped make all the stuff work, run around with the microphone. He's been sound, he's been visual, he's been, you know, hugger and calming me downer. And so could we have a round of applause for Johnny, please? Everyone needs a Johnny. I'd also like to thank Kath, Sean, the team at the Folk Hall, and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who have funded this event, made it possible for us. So a round of applause for our sponsors and our hosts. And finally, obviously, to you all for showing up on a Tuesday night to talk about this subject. You know, it's World Suicide Prevention Day. It's important for us to have a go at things. This has been an experiment, so I appreciate your patience, but I really appreciate your questions and your attention and your just being here to support this conversation. So I think it's gone well. I think we'll do this again, but I would love your feedback. Genuinely, what we need from events like this is honest feedback so that we know whether we're moving in the right direction. So please email hello@menfulness.org. If you want to stick around at the end for a quick chat, then I'm also going to be hanging around at the back of the door. Can we have a massive round of applause for Alex, Victoria, Jack and Frankie for their work tonight? So, as I say, thank you. The Menfulness podcast is available on all major podcast outlets. And if I do say so myself, it's one of the greatest podcasts of all time. So please do go and listen to our other episodes. There is other episodes with these guys with more of a chat. Thank you. We'll see you next time. And whatever you do, keep talking.
Can we thank Sam, please?
Yes, please. Well done, Sam. Well done, Sam. Thank you.